안녕하세요, 여러분. Today I will be teaching 3 한국어 sentence particles, including the object markers, topic markers, and subject markers. First off, we have the topic marking particles, which include and 는. These are used when wanting to clarify the topic of a sentence, describe people with adjectives, and descriptive sentences such as professions, nationalities, etc. And I like to think of these particles as meaning as for, and I'll continue to go into more detail about that as we go on. They can also be used with adjectives, also known as descriptive verbs. Okay, conjugation rules. You have, if it ends with a consonant, you had 은, ends with a vowel, you had 는. Our examples down here, 저는, 저는, which 저 means I or me, so 저는 would mean as for me. If you refer back to up here, as for me, as for I. Over here, today, 오늘, 오늘 plus 은, 오늘은, as for today. Okay, and both in English and Korean, the word order is subject verb. So I sleep refers to both here, both languages. Then another example would be today is good. Again, both being subject verb. Subject verb. Okay, our first example, 저 plus 는 and 자다, to sleep. It'd be 저는 자요. As for me, I sleep. 저는 자요. Then on the right, we have 오늘 plus 은 and 좋다, which is to be good. Put together, 오늘은 좋아요. 오늘은 좋아요. As for today, it is good. So it's kind of clarifying that out of days in general, or out of the days, today in particular is good. Next particle we have is 이 and 가, subject marking particles, used when wanting to identify the subject of a sentence, and also used when a new subject is brought about in conversation. Then after that, 은 and 는 can continue to be used after the declaration has been made. The subject marking particle is just brought in when you're trying to help clarify the meaning of your sentence. Also used with the adjectives, the descriptive verbs. Conjugation rules. If it ends with a consonant, you had 이. Ends with a vowel, you had 가. So examples down here, 꽃. 꽃 is flowers, so 꽃이. Carry the 치, the ch over to the 이 right here, 꽃이. And then 배, which in Korean can either mean stomach, pear, or boat, but based off this picture here, it means stomach. 배, 가, 배가. Okay, again, subject verb for both. Here the flowers are pretty, here the flowers are pretty. Next example, my stomach hurts, or stomach ache, my stomach hurts. Down here at the bottom left, 여기. 여기 is here, plus 는. 꽃, flower, 꽃이, 예쁘다, to be pretty, 예쁘다. So put together, 여기는 꽃이 예뻐요. 여기는, as for here, 꽃이, the flowers, 예뻐요, are pretty. Now you wouldn't have 여기가, 여기가, because that would be insinuating that here in general is beautiful, which it may be, but in this sentence in particular, you're trying to articulate that the flowers here are pretty. So the topic is here. 여기는, as for here. 꽃이, the flowers, are pretty. And again, because 예쁘다 is a descriptive verb, an adjective, go ahead and use either 는 or 은 or 이 or 가, but because we already have 은 or 는 here, for here, you would go ahead and use 이. 꽃이. 여기는 꽃이 예뻐요. Then over here, we have my stomach hurts. When you're trying to show possession in Korean, you add the particle 이. So if you're saying my or my thing, it would be 저의, but oftentimes it's just put together as 제 to make it a little bit easier to pronounce. And in Korean, oftentimes if the pronoun or the person being spoken about, the person spoken to, etc., if it's clear in context who's being talked about, then you can often just omit a pronoun. So it's optional here, because you can either say 제, 배 plus 가, 제, 배 plus 가, 아프다. 아프다, to be hurt or to be sick. So conjugated, it would be optional 제, 배가 아파요. Now you would use 가 here with 아파요. You wouldn't use 는 because the 배 is what is the main subject of what is being acted upon it, or what is hurting. Your stomach is hurting. It's not so much being acted upon. I should have rephrased that. That's for the next particle. It is a subject. It's the main subject of the sentence. My stomach is the thing that is hurting. The flowers are what are beautiful. Okay, last marker we have is 을 and 르, object marking particles. These are used with verbs, and they're used when wanting to identify an object being acted upon by a verb. And this is the most important part, acted upon, which is kind of what I was trying to clarify earlier, where if you wouldn't say 배를 아파요, because that would insinuate that your stomach is being hurt, when in actuality your stomach is hurting. It's not being hurt, it's just hurting. So yeah, with verbs especially, keep in mind that this doesn't apply to adjectives or descriptive verbs. Conjugation rules: ends with a consonant, you add 을. Ends with a vowel, you add 르. Examples: 책을, 바나나, 바나나를. Okay, now this is where word order between English and Korean differs. So in English you have subject, verb, object, but in Korean you have subject, object, verb. As you've probably noticed, all verbs are placed at the end of a Korean sentence. So in English, for example, I read the book would be I, the book, read in Korean. We also have I eat the banana, subject, verb, object, versus I, the banana, eat, subject, object, verb. Okay, 저 plus 는, 저는 책을 읽다, to read. So we have 저는 책을 읽어요. This is the present tense conjugation, 읽어요. 읽다, 읽어요, is acting on 책. So you want to use the object marking particle here. And then 저는 is setting up yourself as the topic. Like, as for me, I read the book. There's no need to use the subject marking particle here because you're already setting in place a topic. You don't need to clarify any further. So just 저는 책을 읽어요. Okay, then our last example over here is 저 plus 는, 저 바나나 plus 르, 먹다, to eat. So put together, 저는 바나나를 먹어요. So what are you eating? The banana. Who's doing the eating of the banana? Me, the topic. I, the book, read, and I, the banana, eat. Okay, now it's time for 연습, which is practice in Korean, 연습. So, conjugate and then 대답을 쓰세요. 대답 is answer. Then you have the little object marking particle here, because 쓰 means to write. 세요 is polite conjugation. Don't worry too much about that for right now. But it's basically, because you're being so polite, it would mean please. So 대답을 쓰세요. 대답을 쓰세요. So conjugate and then please write your answers. So first up we have today, which is 오늘. Then choose the correct conjugation here. Either 은 or 는. Weather, which is 날씨. 날씨, 이 or 가. To be good. 좋다, which is a descriptive verb. Hence why we're using 이 and 가 here. We don't need to use 은 or 는 since we already have it over here for today. You want to clarify that the weather is the thing that is good. And you can go ahead and use present tense conjugation here. So you go ahead and pause the video, either write down your answers or discuss, and then go ahead and press play when you're ready. Okay, so let's look at the answer. As for today, the weather is good. 오늘은, as for today, 날씨가, the weather, 좋아요, is good with the present tense conjugation. 오늘은 날씨가 좋아요. So out of all days, today's weather is good. Okay, last example. Korean culture. 한국 문화. 으르, 정말, really, to like, which is a verb. 좋아하다, present tense conjugation we can go ahead and do again. And again, this is written in the same word order up above, so follow the order that they are written here. And remember to keep in mind that 좋아하다 is again a verb, so you will go ahead and use the object marking particle. Go ahead and pause the video again and press play when you're ready to check your answer. Okay. We have I really like Korean culture. So again, with the pronoun, you can go ahead to and decide whether to add in or omit the pronoun if it's clear in context or not. So let's just go ahead and say 저는 한국 문화를 정말 좋아해요. Or just 한국 문화를 정말 좋아해요. Korean culture, really, I like, really like. So, again, because 좋아하다 is a verb, use the object marking particles. 문화, 문화를. What do I like? Korean culture. And 정말 is an adverb. I'm pretty sure you already talked about this, I think, last week. You just have to remember to always place the adverb in front of the verb. So, really like. What do I really like? 한국 문화, Korean culture. And that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed and it wasn't too confusing. 다 끝났어요. That means all finished, all done. 다 is all. 끝나다 is to be finished, to end. So 다 끝났어요 is all finished. And the finished is in past tense. Again, don't worry about too much about that for right now. But yeah, that's a good phrase to know. 다 끝났어요. Yeah, feel free to ask me any questions if you have anything you're curious about or if I didn't make any sense. But yeah, 좋은 하루 보내세요. Have a good day. 감사합니다. 화이팅!